Yes. Can you go back, please? We lost
Sure.
are both of them on?
The long one. I found if I hit it twice really quick, it works better. Twice now should work. There you go.
Watching it on? Is everybody watching it on this one? Oh, there it goes. I don't know why it's not coming up on that one. Did you?
I can move the TV center away.
It's showing up on one TV. It's got nothing to do with the other TV.
There. Thank you, Doctor. Is it on this one also? Okay. Now, please play this screen in slow motion, Doctor. Stop. The next screen is 17, which we have labeled KRLB. Can you bring that up, sir? And go ahead. Stop. This video, have you slowed it down for analysis?
I have.
Could you please bring that up on the screen? And what speed will you be playing this at?
This one is done at a quarter speed.
Okay. And you have taken the sound out of it?
The soundtrack is not present, that's correct. The sound, since it is, as I explained earlier, uncompressed, the sound would not sync up when you slow it down.
Okay. And so then you would hear sound of gunshots, but not when they're occurring. Is that a fair statement?
Any of the sound that you hear would not be when it's occurring.
Okay. Please show the quarter speed video. Stop it, please. Now, using this video and the audiograph, were you able to figure the times of certain events in event number 2?
Yes, sir.
From the time, strike that. There is what's commonly referred to as jump kick man entering in the video. Do you know who we're talking about, Doctor?
I do.
And when you analyze this video, did jump kick man kick Kyle in the face first, or the first shot go off before the kick?
I'm going to object, Your Honor. This is beyond the scope of the court's order regarding this witness's opinion.
It seems to me the jury could, you're asking him to make an identification that the jurors could make themselves?
I'm asking him, based upon his video analysis, what happened first? The kick to the face in the first gunshot in event number 2, or the gunshot in event number 2, and then the kick to the face?
Overall,
Can you ask the question again, please?
Yes. Based upon your analysis of the video and sound analysis, what occurred first? The kick to the face by jump kick man to my client, or the first gunshot?
Based on my analysis, the kick to the face occurred prior to the gunshot.
And after that was Kyle's first shot in the second event, correct?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, after the kick, the first shot in the second event occurred. That is correct.
Okay, and that happens, I mean, thousandths of a second after. They're very close in time, correct?
They're absolutely very close in time.
Shot number 1, using that first shot at jump kick man as the 0 shot, how much time
The beginning time of shot 1 in the second event till the point of shot 4 was 5.468 seconds.
are you looking at the exhibit?
I am? And maybe I'm misunderstanding your
Yeah.
question.
I have the amount of time elapsing from the 0 shot to the second shot.
Oh, I think I know what's here.
Kyle's second shot in that event. I'm crossing references, and I apologize.
To make this as clear as possible, the first shot in the second event between that time and the fourth shot in the second event is 2.933 seconds.
And how many of shots were fired in event number 2 in total?
For the shots from what's been attributed to Kyle Rittenhouse, 4.
Okay. And the timing between each shot. So Kyle Rittenhouse, and I'll keep it constant. Kyle Rittenhouse shot 1 is at the 0 time, correct?
If we use that as a 0 timer starting point, we will call that 0.
Okay. Kyle Rittenhouse shot number 2, which was directed at jump kick man, how long after shot 1?
0.602 seconds.
Shot number 3, which is the strike, the shot to Anthony Huber, how long was that shot after shot number 2?
1.933.
And the last shot, for Mr. Huber's shot to Anthony, Gage Grosquist's shot was how much time?
Okay, and I'm going to back up on this because I want to make sure this is absolutely clear for the court. Again, 2.933. In one case, we're talking the gap or time between shots. What I just relayed was the time between shots. The total time of all shots was, again, my first answer, 5.468. So this is just clarification for the court.
And so the total of this event of shots fired is 5.468 seconds.
That is correct.
And that event ends at screen 27. You just roll this,
I have 26.
okay, which is shot number 4. KRS4. Go ahead.
You want it played here, sir?
Yeah, if you back up about 2 seconds.
And do you want it played in this size or back to normal?
That size is fine in a factor of half or quarter speed, please.
That would be at normal speed. From approximately the same point, slowed down.
Can you go forward until Mr. Rittenhouse gets up, please?
Yes, sir.
You can stop there. Based upon your video analysis, after this time, does Mr. Rittenhouse fire his weapon anymore?
No.
And from here, Mr. Rittenhouse leaves and continues north down Sheridan Road until he gets to a police officer squad, correct?
Yes, sir.
And from that time, in getting up until he arrives at the police squad car to surrender, how much time is that?
Doing quick math, approximately 1 minute and 26 and about 3/4 of a second.
So 126.75,
Approximately, that's just doing quick math.
understood. Now, you were in court yesterday to hear the testimony and cross-examination of Kyle Rittenhouse, correct?
I was.
And you observed the demonstration that the state put on in showing frames 476 to 500 in the BG of the scene video, correct?
I did.
And 476 to 500 is how many frames per second?
Well, depending on the video that they were showing, my understanding, if my recollection is correct, is they had told us that it was 30 frames per second.
Okay. And at 30 frames per second, that would have been less than a half second of actual action that are broken down into stills, correct?
Again, the numbers being 476, is that correct?
476 to 500.
Right, so that would be 24 frames at 30 frames per second. If it was 30 frames per second, it would be approximately 3/4 of a second.
And Doctor, when one looks at video as a depiction of an event, does that necessarily show what the actors in that video were observing?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, this is beyond the scope of the court's order.
This is the video that,
Overruled.
The short answer is it's impossible for it to do that. Describing it to you the best way that I can. Imagine, well, you were just doing it. All of you were looking at a video screen, a depiction. It's a known focal length from you, yet you can see from maybe, if I go halfway between the jury, about 12 feet, and that stays constant. And then you look from that distance all the way out to 50 yards. Everything in that frame is at the same exact moment of clarity. But your eyes can't do that. The other thing is you're looking at two actors in this case, maybe 5 or 10 actors that you were looking at, depending on what each one of you chose to look at. So the video can't tell you what each one of you were looking at, and it can't tell you what either actor in there was looking at, attending to, nor perceiving. Putting that in its context, though, video has absolute benefit to an analyst to help us understand what was objectively occurring, and that's the way that we use it, and that's, in my argument, the way it should be used. But it also has potential limitations, and I think you actually heard Senior Examiner Armstrong speak to some of those limitations. Camera movement, movement of people, lighting. So for example, we can brighten it up a little bit or clarify it. You can't do that with your eyes. So the short answer is video has great value, but it is not the experience or the perception of the people involved in the event. It can't be.
what is the difference? I mean, video is two-dimensional
Yes, sir?
and reality is three-dimensional?
At a minimum.
Okay. And how does that not translate, if you can opine on that?
Absolutely. So for the members of the jury, if you were to just take and pick a point that's maybe about 6 feet in front of you, maybe on Madam Court Reporter's desk, and you were also to pick a point over here and look at it, I want you to have both of those points in perfect clarity at the same time. Now what I want you to do is, I'm holding up my glasses, so I've already told you what it is, but I want everybody to sort of look at the same point you picked on Madam Court Reporter's desk, and then while you're completely focusing on that, tell me when my glasses drop. We can see that in the video. We have the luxury of hindsight. We have the luxury of going back and taking a single frame. Think about this, 30 frames per second. The blink of an eye is approximately a third of a second. In the blink of an eye, 3 frames have gone by. And we will sit here and examine a frame for moments, minutes, who knows how long an examiner looks at it. That's not wrong. We should be doing that. That's due diligence. But we also have to remember what was the limitation of the actors involved. What were they looking at? What could they have even have seen? What were they attending to? What was happening to them? This goes back to the area of sense making that you heard the counsel speak to. And then more importantly, when we get done with it, we bring it back up to normal speed and say that's the best it could get, regardless of all the slow motion we do to it, enhancing of video, levels, clarification, light, all those types of things.
Lastly, Doctor, the shots in event 1 took less than 1 second, approximately 3/4 of a second.
Approximately 3/4 of a second.
And the events, event number 2, the 4 shots in event number 2 took a total of 2.93 seconds, correct?
That's incorrect. They took a total of 5.468.
I apologize.
2.933 was the time between the third and the fourth shot.
So the total between the two events of shooting is less than 7 seconds.
Are you asking if you were to put both those two figures together?
Yes,
Yeah, it's about 6.5 seconds.
I have nothing further.
Cross-examine? Well, wait a minute. We need a break? No? Okay, let's go.
Do you want this off screen, counsel?
No, you can leave it up, that's
Okay.
fine, thank you.
Yes, sir.
You indicated earlier that your law enforcement experience is in the state of Oregon, is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
You have never worked as a law enforcement officer in the state of Wisconsin?
No, I have not.
And you were retained by the defense to provide expert opinions in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you are being compensated for that?
Yes, sir.
What is your hourly rate?
It varies somewhere between, for certain tasks, $160 an hour, and other tasks up to $480 an hour.
And for your testimony here right now, are you billing at a rate of $480 an hour?
No, sir, I'm billing at a rate of $320 an hour.
$320 an hour to be
Yep.
here in court?
Yes, sir.
You indicated that when you timed the gap in time between what we are referring to as the Zeminski shot, that's the first gunshot, in the incident between the defendant and Joseph Rosenbaum. You're familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir, I am.
The time between that and the defendant's first shot at Joseph Rosenbaum, you timed that at, I believe you said, about 2 3/4 seconds. Is that correct?
And I can bring it up exactly if you want.
Yeah, could you
Is that
please?
helpful? So here you can see the first shot over here where my cursor is moving at 24.61, and then the first shot here at 27.25. So obviously if you go out to the hundredths, you see it down here where my cursor is moving, and I can take a look at my notes, but it would be the time between those two. So again, approximately 2 3/4, thereabouts.
Okay. And you have also broken down the gap in time between the defendant's fourth shot to Joseph Rosenbaum and the time in which that first person comes up behind him and swings at his head. Do you understand those two events that I'm describing? If it's helpful, your observation, so on the list of observations you have, observation 11 is shot number 4 to Joseph Rosenbaum. Do you see that?
Right, so if I understand correctly, we're asking for the time between 11 and 15?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm glad you're doing the math for me, by the way. 'Cause I'm not
I'm
good.
about to bring my calculator up in front of the screen for you guys. But putting that aside, 1.837. So rough math again, about 1 minute 48 seconds thereabouts.
So it takes approximately 1 minute and 48 seconds between the time that the defendant shoots Joseph Rosenbaum the fourth time and the time that the first person on the street makes, shall we say, physical contact with Mr. Rittenhouse?
And I apologize, I was doing the time between number 14. So the time between, and just to make sure we're correct, 15 is the observation you're referring to, correct?
Yes.
And the time between observation 11.
Yes. If it's helpful, Doctor, I'm doing rough math in my head. It appears to be roughly 59 seconds, about a minute.
48,
Does that sound about right?
48, 49, 50, 57.
So about a minute passes between Can you pause here, please, Doctor? At this moment in the video, do you have the ability to zoom in so that we can see even clearer the area between the defendant and Mr. Grosskreutz? Are you able to keep the video centered on that location?
I can, you'll see me moving to do it, but I can do it as I'm moving. There'll be a little bit of a jag. It's not going to be smooth.
Would you be able to play from this point and try and keep it in as zoomed, as clear, as close as possible so we can see the defendant and Mr. Grosskreutz? Do you understand what I'm asking?
The goal would be to keep this and this in frame at the speed that's being played.
Yes, could you do that for us, please? Pause right there, please. Now, Dr. Black, if I can look at your Exhibit 142, you have a number of observation points there. I think there are a total of 31 of them on this list. Do you have that in front of you still?
I did.
Okay. And observation point number 8 is the first shot that the defendant fires at Joseph Rosenbaum. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And observation number 26 is the final shot that the defendant fires at Mr. Grosskreutz, correct?
Also correct.
Can you tell us the amount of time that passes between the first shot, observation number 8, to Joseph Rosenbaum, and the final shot to Mr. Grosskreutz, which is observation number 26?
I can, and again, and just to make sure that I have the numbers again, we're looking for observation 26, correct, as the stop point. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Okay. And your start point one more time, please.
Observation 8
8.
to observation 26.
Approximately 1 minute and 20 seconds.
In that 1 minute and approximately 1 minute and 20 seconds, the defendant fires all 8 shots that we see. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You indicated also you've measured the time between the two shots that the defendant fires at the person who jumps and tries to kick him in the face.
Yes, sir.
And you indicated that the gap between that first shot to that individual and the second shot to that individual was 0.602 seconds.
Yes, sir.
So approximately 0.6 of a second.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you also have the ability with the software that you're using to give us the data that's generated by that software. There's a separate report you can generate as part of that. Is that fair to say?
For part of it, what's referred to as a workflow report. So basically, the actions that I took upon a piece of video, the workflow, whether it's enlargement or these type of things, those can be generated.
And do you have the ability to generate that here today if you wanted to?
It would take a little bit of time. I can generate it. I wouldn't say that I could generate it today. I'd probably have to do it during the evening, but I can get them generated.
Okay, and that would show us the work that you've done to modify, edit, or do anything to the videos that we're showing in this, in what you've testified to so far, correct?
Yes, between the notes, as in if I write down a parent file, and then this was changed from 30 frames per second to 7.5, using nearest neighbor with a crop like this, I'd be able to do that.
Okay. And you indicated earlier that you're being paid hourly for this. How much in total so far have you billed the defense for the work you've done in this case?
Estimated at probably a little over $9,000.
Your Honor, we asked earlier for some data that he can generate for us. I'd like to see that before I finish my examination of this witness.
No objection.
So at this point, I'll pause.
Okay, well,
We could put on a different witness while that's happening.
that'd be great.
Is that acceptable?
Yes, thank you.
May he leave? Yes.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give this matter with the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. You may be seated. Go ahead.
Could you please state your name, spelling your last name for the record?
Officer Brittany Bray, last name is spelled B-R-A-Y.
Officer, were you employed by the Kenosha Police Department on August 25th, 26th of 2020?
Yes, sir.
And in the early morning hours of the 26th, did you have an occasion to collect some evidence?
Yes, sir.
And directing your attention to what we're referring to as event number 2 or crime scene number 2 on Sheridan Road. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Now, if I show you some exhibits, would you be able to tell me if you're familiar with them?
Yep.
Just take a look at those and see.
Yes, I'm familiar with all of them.
Okay, and what are they?
They are shell casings.
And are they all the same caliber?
Yes, sir.
And are they all the same make or brand?
Yes, they are.
And those were found in the middle of Sheridan Road?
Correct.
And did you find or log into evidence any unfired bullets at that location of that caliber and that brand?
No.
If there had been an unfired bullet matching those empty shell casings, is that something you would have taken as evidence?
Yes.
Thank you. Move those exhibits into evidence.
Objection?
No.
Receipt?
Now the bullets and the gun, please. What's that? going to show you what's been marked as exhibit defense. Can you read the number for me? I think I don't have my glasses.
Sure. 983?
Defense 146.
146. There you go.
Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It is a 40 caliber Glock 27 that I collected on scene.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the
Yeah.
last part of what you said. Can you say?
Sure, sorry. It's a Glock 27 40 caliber handgun I collected at the scene.
Okay, you collected that on Sheridan Road on the 26th,
Correct.
and it is still in the same condition and box you put it in?
Yes, sir.
Showing you what's been marked as defense exhibit 147. Could you tell me what that is?
It is the magazine that was collected near the gun.
Okay, is that magazine loaded?
It is,
Did you ever determine how many bullets in that magazine?
I believe, 9.
Is that on the label?
The amount of bullets?
Yeah.
No.
And lastly, defense exhibit 148. Could you tell me what that is?
This is going to be the unfired 40 caliber round I found near the gun.
Okay, so there was an unfired round D148 found in the same area as the shells that were in the magazine and the Glock, correct?
Correct.
And did you ever look to see if they were the same make and model?
I did.
Were they?
Yes.
So, might sound like an obvious question or a stupid question, but you at a crime scene, if you find an unfired bullet, you pick that up.
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Cross-examine?
What's that? I would move them into evidence.
Is there objection?
No.
Numbers?
146, 147, and 148.
I receive.
Good morning, Officer Bray.
Good morning.
Did you collect any other guns or evidence, well, let me put it this way, any other guns than what you've just testified to?
No.
Are you familiar with AR-15s?
Yes.
How are you familiar with them?
I own them. I've shot them. I've trained with them.
Have you ever had an experience where one has jammed on you?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
You have to clear it, usually to rack the slide back to eject the jam, whatever the round is that's jammed in there. Send it forward, and another bullet would go into the chamber.
When you have to eject whatever's in the chamber, the thing that's being ejected, is that a spent shell casing or is it
Could be
an
either
unfired?
or. Could be either or.
We need to make sure we're not talking at the same time for the
Sure.
benefit of the court reporter. So, in your experience, have you ever had a situation in which you have pulled the trigger, the round has fired, but the spent shell casing did not automatically eject like it should?
Yes.
And then that process you've described would be the way of ejecting that spent shell casing?
Correct.
I have nothing further.
Check it for me. Does the court have a ruler? Showing it's been previously marked as Exhibit 28, not this specific gun, but are you familiar with guns like this type?
Yes.
And if one had a jam or had to clear, one would pull back. I don't know how to do it.
There you go. Yep.
Right here,
Correct.
correct?
Show the trigger.
And that would eject the bullet that was here, correct?
Correct.
And I've got a standard ruler that I was provided by the court from the back of where the charger sits to the end of it, 4 inches. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
And to clear the weapon, you have to take it all the way back and let it all the way forward.
Yes.
Which is a very obvious movement, correct?
Yep.
And takes time.
Yes.
I don't know.
Maybe Russ?
Just one briefly, so if you just fired that gun and that spent shell casing didn't properly eject, what would happen if you pulled the trigger then?
It
Again,
would go click, it wouldn't go bang.
so in order to fire the gun a second time after that, you would have to do that re-racking. Is
Yes,
that right?
correct.
And then if there were ammunition in the magazine, it would load another round and the gun would be ready to fire.
Correct.
That's all I have.
Let me step down.
Interview with Frank Hernandez.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated.
Sir, will you state your name and spell your last name, please?
My name is Frank Andrew Hernandez, also known as Drew Hernandez publicly. My last name Hernandez.
Okay. And Mr. Hernandez, can you tell us a little bit of your background in terms of what you do for work?
So I'm a professional commentator on Real America's Voice. I commentate on the news, I commentate on what's in pop culture on a daily basis, and I also do on-the-ground reporting, specifically on protests and the 2020 riots.
And as it relates to the your on-the-ground kind of reporting is what I'm interested in. Were you in Kenosha on the evening of August 25th of 2020?
Yes.
And were you there to cover what was happening with the civil unrest in Kenosha?
Yes.
And were you able to do that with some type of video equipment?
I use my iPhone, and I also use a body cam. And specifically on this night, that's what I was using to document the riots.
Now, after the 25th, I don't want to know where you live, but you don't live in Kenosha. Is that
No.
fair?
No.
Was there a time after the 25th that someone from law enforcement had reached out to you to try to get a hold of some of the information that you had through video?
Yes, I don't remember his name specifically, but a detective did reach out to me.
Okay. If I said it was Detective Ben Antaramian or Detective Martin Howard, does that do anything
One of
for
the
you?
two. He identified himself from Kenosha.
And were you able to make connection in some form or fashion with those law enforcement officers?
Yes.
Okay. Can you just briefly explain kind of how that went down?
So they requested all the footage that I had, and they sent me a Dropbox link that was not sufficient. It only had, I don't know, not enough memory because the body cam footage is, over 50 videos. But the reason why I wasn't able to follow up was because I was covering all the riots last year. I was in Portland, Seattle, Washington, D.C., was all over the country, so I just lost track.
So is it fair to say after the civil unrest in Kenosha, your employment then took you to cover other things going on around the United States?
Yes.
And so if I have it right, you and law enforcement had kind of not for some period of time after that.
Yes.
Was there a period of time then closer to today or this trial that you were able to do that?
Yes, I did that through my attorney.
And were you able then to provide to both Mr. Rittenhouse's lawyers and the prosecution a full set of the videos that you had mentioned that you had taken?
Yes.
And so my questions to you initially will be this. Were you kind of working by yourself that evening, or were you working with a team, or what?
Yes, last year I was working independently by myself.
And is it fair to say that on that night you didn't know who Kyle Rittenhouse was?
No.
I don't know if you've heard this, but there's been other people mentioned, Mr. Rosenbaum. Were you aware of who that was?
No.
Were you aware of Mr. Huber or Mr. Grosskreutz?
No.
Okay, so you had no knowledge of any of these people prior to August 25th?
Nope.
Fair? Okay. So looking back now, understanding you're familiar with who Mr. Rittenhouse is now, correct?
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity on your videos to see if you had captured Mr. Rittenhouse on video, had any type of contact with him in any way?
I have had no contact with Kyle Rittenhouse, but I have looked at footage to just go over it, yes.
And does your footage capture any, excuse me, any contact, maybe not personal contact, but anything that you saw Mr. Rittenhouse doing that evening?
Yes.
Can you describe that?
So Antifa and the rioters were going head to head with the police in front of the courthouse. And as they were doing so, the police then responded. I believe they called an unlawful assembly of some sort because Antifa had their riot shields out. They were throwing rocks at the police officers. They were even trying to get inside of the hood of one of the police vehicles. And this is all documented on footage that I submitted as well. But to answer your question, when the rioters were being dispersed further down Sheridan towards the Car Source dealerships down the street, the rioters were grabbing concrete slabs. They were throwing them on the floor to create more rocks and to throw them at police officers. They were launching fireworks and other explosives that I couldn't identify. But as they were being past Car Source 2, and the rioters identified individuals with long-arm rifles on top of the building, and they immediately attempted to agitate them, to try and start some conflict with them, saying, "You ain't the police, you ain't the police." The rioters initiated that conflict.
Objection on a move to strike. He's speculating as to the intent of people.
You need to proceed by question and answer.
Very good. Okay. So my question is this. Did you see, in reviewing your videos, did you see Mr. Rittenhouse on the 25th?
Yes, and that at that point, Kyle Rittenhouse came out of Car Source 2, and he attempted to de-escalate the situation.
Okay, so if I have this right, we've been all doing this for almost 2 weeks now. But this is the Car Source 2, or Car Doctor it has now been referred to. This is the place you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And that is the first time that you had observed Mr. Rittenhouse, is that fair?
Yes.
Right. And you had said that you had saw him come out from inside the building?
Yes, it appeared to be.
And did you hear, did you just see him, or did you hear anything he was saying?
I just saw him.
And what did it appear that he was doing?
In the video, Kyle has his hands like this, and he is saying something, but I can't identify what he's saying, but he clearly attempts to de-escalate the situation, and he actually is successful because the rioters then disperse.
During that evening, I know that you said you didn't know who he was, but did you, in looking back at your videos, have an opportunity to observe someone that evening, Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
And do you recall, just tell me where you saw him originally, if you can.
The first time I saw Mr. Rosenbaum was when the police were pushing the rioters back to the gas station on Sheridan, Ultimate, I believe. And Mr. Rosenbaum was pushing a flaming dumpster on fire into police vehicles that were occupied by officers and human beings.
Mr. Hernandez, I'm going to show you what has been marked as Exhibit 149. Can you identify that? Tell me what that is, a photo of?
This is a photo of the event I just described.
Okay. And does that photograph, that's a still photograph of a video that you took, is that
Yes.
right? Right. I'm going to ask that you look to your left.
Okay.
And if you can play that, can you tell me if that's what you captured? Is that the video that you're talking about with Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you just back it up a second? That's good. There's a person who's putting out that dumpster fire, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall, or can you tell whether or not that person, at least visibly, was armed?
No, not at the time.
You couldn't tell if that person was armed?
No.
Did you see, I'll ask it to you this way, that's probably a bad question. Did you see a weapon on that person?
No.
And can you just play the video then? After you captured that video, then was there other? Did you capture Mr. Rosenbaum then doing anything again after that video?
Yes, he immediately was triggered and aggravated because an
Now,
individual.
why do you say that?
Because you can even hear at the end of the video, Rosenbaum is saying, "Why do you do that?" And right after this event is when they identified the individual with the fire extinguisher with the individuals with the rifles in the gas station, and their attention went from the police immediately to the individuals at the gas station.
So what I'm interested in is Mr. Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Did you see Mr. Rosenbaum do anything that kind of drew your attention after what we saw?
Absolutely. He led the charge into the gas station. He was getting physically aggressive. He appeared to be attempting to start a physical altercation with people in the gas station, to the point where he was telling one of the individuals with a rifle, "Shoot me, N-word, shoot me, N-word," clearly attempting to start a physical altercation.
I'm going to show you what has been marked as I think it's 150. Can you tell the jury what that is?
This is right after the dumpster was put out, and Joseph Rosenbaum and other rioters around him begin to turn their attention onto the individuals with rifles at the Ultimate gas station.
Can you play that? A little bit forward, Is that Mr. Rosenbaum that we see kind of will be on the right side of our screen?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. So you observed, that's you filming that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the last thing I'm going to ask you about is was there another time prior to the shooting of Mr. Rosenbaum that you observed Mr. Rosenbaum and Mr. Rittenhouse in the same location?
Yes.
And if you know, about how long before the shooting did you see that?
So after this scene at the gas station, there was another fire at a mechanic shop a block away. Went to go document that for about 20 minutes. And when I came back is when I saw Rosenbaum in the middle of the street lighting a trash can on fire with now his identity concealed with a t-shirt over his face.
So I'm going to show you what is red marked as Exhibit 151. Can you tell me what that is?
This is when I returned to Sheridan after documenting the fire at the mechanic shop about a block away. And this is the beginning of when I see what I just described.
Okay. And I might have you stop it. So. Now, can you tell me, is this person right here? Do you know now that's Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
I didn't hear the question. Do you know now that?
That's the person in that video is Mr. Rosenbaum. Now, was that did you see Mr. Rosenbaum with that mask on that you had or the shirt wrapped around his head?
Yes.
And he appears to be walking, southbound on Sheridan?
Yes, towards Car Source 3.
Okay. Can you roll it again? You see this person right here?
Yes.
Does that person appear to be holding something in their hand?
Yes, that is a fire extinguisher.
Okay. And does that person appear to have on something on his hands or on their hands?
Yes, purple gloves.
Okay. Is this the person right here? I know it's blurry right now, but is that the person that you saw carrying the fire extinguisher
Yes.
with the purple gloves? Okay. Now, go ahead. If you know, or based on what you saw, did this person here with the fire extinguisher and purple gloves, did that person react to anybody else that you saw at this point that was walking in front of him?
No.
Okay. Did you see him at this point? Was he, in your opinion, did he say anything?
Yes, if you play the video further, I believe you could hear Kyle saying or requesting if anybody needs medical. And the reason why it may not be shown on this is because it's body cam, but I could see this with my own vision as I'm walking down the street.
Okay, go ahead. Now, at this point, it appears this person here is Joseph Rosenbaum. Is that right?
Yeah, if you back it up a couple seconds, you'll see him even more clearly, and that is Joseph Rosenbaum, yes.
Now, when he was walking down the street, headed south on Sheridan, he was ahead of Mr. Rittenhouse, is that right?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Now, in this photograph, or still, the video, he appears to be behind him?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you hear somebody say, "Fuck you," right?
Yes.
Were you able to ascertain or make out who said that?
At the time, no. No.
And you see, right, Joseph Rosenbaum running after Kyle Rittenhouse. Is that about as close to the incident as you get?
At the direct time of the shooting, yes.
Did you see what Joseph Rosenbaum was doing as he was chasing Kyle Rittenhouse?
So I was at the corner of the car source, and the first thing I did identify was that Rosenbaum was charging Kyle Rittenhouse from behind. And then as he's charging him into the car source parking lot, a firearm goes off. You can see it in the frame at the top of the car.
Can I ask you to stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Did you hear that real time?
Hear it and saw it in real time.
Okay, go ahead.
And as the first firearm goes off, Rosenbaum is already charging Kyle from behind, attempts to throw a bag at him, not sure what's inside of it. And Kyle is right at the corner, right there, in the car source, and turns around, and Rosenbaum is lunging towards him very clearly, and Kyle fires.
And do you see that with your eyes?
Yes.
That night?
Mhm.
Okay. Your contact with Kyle that evening was, just in terms of what you observed, I'm asking. Did you observe him acting in an aggressive manner to anyone that you observed?
In no way, shape, or form. The first time I saw Kyle, he actually de-escalated a situation.
Did you observe him at any time that evening pointing his firearm at anybody or threatening anybody with that firearm?
No.
Your Honor, I would move, I think it's 149 to 151, and I don't have any other questions for Mr. Hernandez.
Objection,
No.
cross-examine.
No, you would have to break it.
I'm told the food is coming around 12:15, so why
Okay.
don't you go ahead now, please?
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hernandez.
Good afternoon.
Where do you live normally?
I live in Arizona.
So you don't live in Kenosha,
No.
don't live in Wisconsin.
Nope.
You came up here because you wanted to cover the things that were going on in Kenosha after the shooting of Jacob Blake. Is that fair to say?
The violent riots, yes.
The violent riots?
Yeah.
By Antifa.
There were Black Lives Matter supporters. Antifa was present. This is all documented on video, yes.
You've made a lot of videos of what you consider to be Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots in Seattle, Portland, DC, other cities, fair to say?
I haven't made them, I documented them.
Well, did you record them?
Yes.
Okay, so when I said made, you recorded video.
Yep.
And that's because you, and then you take that video and you post it on where?
Twitter, mainly, social media.
You also have your own YouTube channel?
Yes.
Do you have your own independent website that you operate?
I do have an independent website, yes.
What's that called?
drewhlive.com.
What is that?
That's my own independent website.
But is it like a news source? Is it
It's
a
an
blog?
independent website
Of what type?
for myself.
You characterized yourself as a professional commentator. What does that mean?
That means that I comment on the news professionally on a daily basis.
Professionally meaning you're paid?
Yep.
Who pays you?
I am employed by Real America's Voice.
Real America's Voice?
Yes.
What is that?
That is a news commentary, breaking news website. They have their own apps and, website.
Other than getting paid by Real America's Voice, do you get paid by any other source to do your professional commentating?
No.
Is your Drew H. Live website part of Real America's Voice?
No.
The things that you post on your website, Drew H. Live, do you also share those with Real America's Voice?
Depending on what's going on where I'm at. But this is unrelated to what happened in Kenosha because I was not employed by Real America's Voice at the time.
That's something that's happened since then.
Yes.
And does Real America's Voice have any sort of political bias or agenda or anything like that?
What is developed?
It goes to the bias of the witness, Your Honor.
The bias in what respect? I assume that people, as I commented at the beginning, this is not a political trial. And I don't know how you would isolate a person's particular politics and determine that that person is going to evaluate the evidence one way or another.
Okay, I'll move on.
Your videos that you have captured of these incidents that you call riots, they're very slanted against the people who are rioting. You characterize them as Antifa, Black Lives Matter rioters, correct?
Because they are rioting in the footage, yes, absolutely.
And so you came here to Kenosha because you felt that's what was going on here.
I felt like it could have possibly been a riot on the first night. So when I showed up, it turned out to be a very violent riot.
And you continued to cover that on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday nights?
I covered it Sunday night. I went back to Chicago Monday and then came back Tuesday.
So you weren't here on Monday night at all?
No.
And on Tuesday night, you were recording video with your body cam?
Yeah.
You were also recording it with your cell phone?
Yes.
The last video that we just watched there of the shooting of Joseph Rosenbaum, was that recorded on your body cam or on your cell phone?
Both.
I just saw one video. Were there more than one video that you just shared with us?
There's two. There's the body cam and then there's the cell phone as well.
What was the one we just saw?
I believe that may have been both.
Where is the body cam located when you wear it on your body?
Right here.
And when you recorded the shooting of Joseph Rosenbaum, where were you holding your cell phone?
Right here.
Okay, so the cell phone is, you're using your right hand, above your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Shoulder, same as my shoulder, right here.
And the body cam you said was over on the left side of your chest.
Mhm.
Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
The video that we just saw had a single angle. It didn't have two separate angles. So when you tell us that's both, I don't understand what you mean.
That means that there's two recordings of the same thing, and that's why I submitted to the defense and the prosecution the entire videos. There's maybe about 80 to 100 videos that you guys could examine for yourself.
I know all that. What I'm asking you is what we just watched.
Mhm.
Which camera were you using to record that?
Both.
Is that video edited?
No, I have not edited it, but it has been put together at the right time, the timing.
Who did that?
I did that.
So you combined two video sources into one?
With the same timing and audio, but at the same time, it could also be seen, the jury could see for themselves. If they look at the body cam footage, it's the exact same thing.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Don't wag your head in response to the witness's answer.
What you said, if the jury looks at the body cam footage, is that separate from the cell phone footage?
Yeah, there's obviously two devices recording.
And you're telling us that the video that we just watched, can we have Exhibit 151 played again, please? Mr. Hernandez, we have the video that was the last one played for you, Exhibit 151 up on the screen. Can we play that forward, please? Now, as we're watching this video, Mr. Hernandez, you're telling us that what we're seeing has been recorded by two separate devices at the same time?
This is a body cam.
Okay. Is there a point in this video where it switches to your cell phone?
Yes.
Can you please point that out to us?
You'd have to fast forward all the way to when I get to car source 3.
Can we skip, let's skip to the 2.5 minute mark, I guess. I don't know. Let's pause right there.
A little further back.
Okay, can we go back maybe 30 seconds? I don't know.
A little further back. Right, start right here.
Okay,
I'll tell you when it switches.
okay. Can we play from here, please?
Yeah, a little further up.
Why don't we hit play right now? Is the switch going to occur after this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right there. Our little, hold on, here it goes. Right there.
Okay. Thank you. So what you did is you took a portion of your body cam video and a portion of your cell phone video and you spliced them together.
I don't know if I would say splice, but I put them together.
That's an old-fashioned movie term from when they used to have actual film. Why did you do that?
Because it's the same exact event. Like I said, you could take a look at the body cam footage as well. You can see it as well on there.
And you're testifying here today that through your attorney, you have provided the defense and the state with that entire incident recorded on both your body cam and on your cell phone?
Yep.
But what we just saw was your editing of them together
You guys asked for my footage, so I gave it to you.
through your attorney.
Yes.
That's an attorney that you have out of Madison?
What's the relevance of this?
Well, Your Honor, we've had a lot of questions about other people.
What's the relevance of this?
I would like to know why he felt the need to retain an attorney to provide video in this case. I think it goes to bias. I think it goes to credibility. It's been asked of other witnesses.
Let's take the lunch break. Please don't talk about the case during the break.
They're running behind.
Where's it coming from? Mr. Binger?
Your Honor, we've already heard other witnesses be asked about why they've retained an attorney testify in this case. But in particular, this defendant is represented by the same law firm that employs one of the defense experts. So I believe that that goes to bias.
Did you want to respond?
I think the only question that came up about a lawyer was when Mr. Grosskreutz had filed the $10 million lawsuit, which is clearly bias evidence. There was a hearing on that.
Yeah, well, there was also testimony by Mr. Yeah, about his employing an attorney after his interview with the district attorney's office.
And Mr. DeBruin, he explained why he had done that based on what he believed to be the conversations with Mr. Binger. The fact that somebody hires a lawyer in and of itself doesn't make them biased.
Yeah, I don't see where, he may do it for proprietary reasons. People have received a lot of his material that I assume he has copyright to. I don't know, I'm just assuming, but he's a business person. So I don't know if he's got corporate or business interests in that. The mere fact that he hired a lawyer, I don't see where that's probative of bias.
It's not simply that he hired a lawyer. He hired a lawyer to provide us with this evidence. It would be one thing if he hired a lawyer to organize the articles of incorporation for his business and it had nothing to do with the evidence in this case. The lawyer was the intermediary that gave us this evidence. That was I presume, and I'd like to ask, I presume that was Mr. Hernandez's choice not to give it to us directly. And again, there's been some testimony about him providing some things to the detectives by Dropbox and then not providing other things. And I'd like to probe that. And now in the middle of trial, right? And now in the middle of trial, suddenly we're getting a whole bunch more through an attorney. And so it's not just that he's hiring a random attorney. He's hiring an attorney that is with the same law firm as one of their expert witnesses.
Who's that?
Is it Henley Burrish?
What was it? I'm sorry.
I've got the name of the firm here, Your Honor, if I could have 1 second.
Hurley Burrish is the firm.
Hurley Burrish is the firm. They are out of Madison. And the defense has retained Peyton, Peyton, Engel, Engel, as an expert witness. He's employed by the same firm that also is representing this witness. So I think that that goes to bias.
So you have an expert from a law firm, is that what you're telling me? Am I understanding that right?
The expert did a phone dump. So they have an expert who does what you would describe as when law enforcement takes a cell phone and does a search of the phone.
Sure, okay.
That's what he did. They employ someone there to do it for anyone. And we used that person to do it for Mr. Rittenhouse. They did no legal work, and as that term for a lawyer-client kind of thing. He did it to do, I think it's a cell bright extraction.
If you asked me to do a phone dump, in addition to thinking, I would have to go to somebody to comply.
This is a law firm, Your Honor, that's getting presumably paid by the defense for expert witness services and presumably paid by this witness to represent him. There's a commonality there, and that, I believe, shows bias. Now, you may see it differently, the jury may see it differently, but I'd like to explore this, and the jury can evaluate how that affects the credibility of this witness. But it's not something where he's hiring an attorney to help him buy a piece of property or get him out of a divorce or something like that. It's directly pertaining to the evidence that he's testifying about in this case.
Well, I probably will allow this. I want to think about it for the next half hour. But I don't know if we're headed anywhere that's going to get us something of value. You're introducing on the subject of bias, which of course is bias evidence is admissible because it calls into credibility the witnesses. It calls into question the witness's credibility. He's generally just presented videos, there has been some testimonial statement. But I'll permit it, I think, somewhat, but you're talking about his employing a law firm, and for reasons we've already discussed, that there's going to be a limit. In fact, I think I shut down somebody I was told not to inquire further on representation. Discussion with an attorney, I think it was Mr. Sharafi asked about something, and I wouldn't let him do it. So it's going to be a closely watched door. All right, anything else?
What time do you want to start?
Let's hope for 1 o'clock. I don't know. Hope the Asian food isn't coming. Isn't on one of those boats in Long Beach Harbor. But let's aim for 1 o'clock.